Thank you very much, Guido. Thank you, Rasmus, and the organizer of the 8th World PCF Forum. I'm very glad to be here, and thank you for the invitation. I will start by the 4 messages I would like you to remember after my presentation. First is that most of you, I'm sure, have known that the French government has changed, but the political will to develop environmental product footprint, environmental footprint for products did not change. So we still have a political will and demand to the services I'm part of to develop such a scheme, a system. Second is that as in Quebec, we did during 1 year a pilot phase, an experiment, national scale, at the national scale. And it proved that it is feasible, even for very small enterprise, to communicate on environmental footprint, even if the methodology are not harmonized for the moment, but they used what was available and they proved it's feasible. Third message is that we are now gathering elements to proceed to a synthesis of this national experiment that we will transmit to the French Parliament by the end of this year. And we don't have distance enough today to have final conclusions, but the feedbacks are quite positive. So even we have political demand to develop it, and we have from the ground, from the economic actors, a political demand also to harmonize and to develop a scheme. My fourth message is please forgive my English. Okay. So this is a progress report on the national experiment of the display of product multi-criteria environmental footprint. It is not only carbon footprint, but more broader with a more comprehensive approach of environmental challenges. Okay, so we used to say that the French system for displaying products' environmental characteristics information relies on 5 pillars. I will insist on this much more on the fourth one, which is the national experiment today. But just to remind you what are the fifth pillars. The first one is obviously the legislative basis. We have 2 Grenelle laws. Each one include an article related to the development of environmental footprint projects. The French authorities are promoting private initiatives from 2008, and we can say it ended by 2011, since the national and public experiment started at that moment. Third one is the methodological expertise and standardization platform, ADEME-AFNOR. ADEME is the equivalent, let's say, of EPA in the United States, and AFNOR is like the French ISO. And the national experiment was to test concretely if it was possible to involve, to get much more companies familiar with those concepts of LCA, communicating the impacts, and maybe to have feedbacks on how the consumers understand this kind of information. And the fifth pillar is that we try with Sylvain Chevassus, that you might know, with Martin Bortmeyer, that was present at the previous 7th World Forum in Berlin, to share the methodological development and the political vision that we have in France. So we want to share everything with you. In a nutshell, in the first Grenelle law that was adopted in 2009, the Article 54 includes the right for the consumers to have access to sincere, objective, and comprehensive environmental information. This is really important. It is our basis. And they, 1 year later, in 2010, with the vast majority of the French Parliament, was adopted this second law, and the Article 228 is saying that an experiment has to be conducted during 1 year, and it will have to start from the 1st of July. LCA approach has to be adopted, multi-criteria with a carbon footprint, mandatory carbon footprint, but not only. and it has to be it has to go until the consumer. So it's a B2C process. And after 1 year of experiment, we have to make an analysis, a synthesis, and transmit it to the French Parliament to maybe generalize the scheme. I've talked about the ADEME AFNOR platform. It's a quite impressive process going on for 4 years now. The general platform is progressively adopting PCRs or sector guidance at methodological level. I know some of you know Magali Tralan, who is the head of projects in France, working for AFNOR. And a lot of stakeholders, a lot of organizations are working, and they are working together within homogeneous product categories, defining the rules that have to be followed to implement and to calculate environmental footprint for products. We also have transversal working groups to define methodologies and communication aspects. So far, the ADEME AFNOR technical and methodological platform has produced several documents. The more broader one is called the BPX 30323, sorry for the name, which is contains the general guidelines to develop more precise documents for like PCRs or sector methodological guides. Main principles are still the same. LCA, B2C, product and packaging, and multi-criteria. So far, we have some PCRs that have been finalized and validated, finalized in the working group, homogeneous for each product categories, and that have been validated by the general platforms. We have for food, beverage, and pet food. We have for shoes. We have for backpacks, shampoos, and so on. And we have some other in progress, like detergents, clothes, stationery, toys, dairy, fats. Today we have, I know Quantis worked a lot for the dairy document. And in parallel, ADEME is building a public database which will contain generic data. So now I will focus on the national experiment that started the 1st of July 2011. So the game was to get interested companies participating in a very pioneering work to quantify and communicate environmental information on a multi-criteria and LCA approach until the consumer. That was the game. We knew we had not, at that moment, defined or finalized methodologies, but we encouraged companies that wanted to participate to use the existing one in terms of methodologies and data. It had to be every operation, every companies participating in the national experiment had to follow as much as possible the BPX and follow the main principles I've stated previously. So flexibility was given to the companies. Of course, we could not achieve comparability. There is like a trade-off at that moment. We could not have comparability, but we did not want this to be a barrier. We wanted to learn by doing. So we gave flexibility, even though we knew and we communicated, the ministry communicated on the characteristic of non-comparability at that time. So a call for volunteer at the end of 2010, 230 applicants, companies, and we had to select only 168 of them. They come from all sectors. Their size is quite diverse. On this little diagram, you can see that 30% of the participating companies have less than 50 employees. So we have some SMEs in the national experiment. And I would say only a quarter of them are big companies, more than 500 employees. 70 of them are belonging to the food sectors. And we have foreign companies and French branches of multinational. By product categories, you can see that food, again, is the most represented category. Second most represented category is the electric and electronic equipment and furniture. So now I would like to show you some images, very simple. Okay, for paintings. So you will see a lot of creativity. What you will see is the multi-criteria information with the carbon footprint included. And you will see the creativity of the companies. That some of them decided to build a color code to normalize, to get letters, to invent ways of communicating, and we will learn about their experience by the end. Now we are starting learning a lot because we are now gathering the elements to make the balance of the national experiment. Shampoos, printed paper, organic oat by an organic retailer, trout, coffee with smartphone. You could flash a code and get access to the environmental information on your smartphone. This is wine. And they decided to compare, to communicate the information, to compare it to very concrete things that speaks to people. A shower and taking the car. This is grape juice with a very innovative indice environmental. This is Casino. Jeans, you had panels in the stores, and so on. Okay, so now I said that we are entering in the phase of analyzing the national experiment. What are the main items we want to learn about? The technical feasibility and the data issues, of course, difficulty or facility to get access to data. Communication and format, what is the best one? What do they think? Why did they choose some of them? What were the relations along the supply chains? Was it easy to get data from the N+1? Oh la la, okay. I will accelerate. Issues about costs. Consumer reactions and understandings, even though we did not expect at that moment any, let's say, fine understanding by the consumers, and even less consumer change at that time. And of course, we want to learn how to guarantee the reliability of the information, which is a really important point. The ministry elaborated a questionnaire that has been sent to the participating companies. You have several parts in these questionnaires, and we will learn from each part, making some small statistics with the answers we will get. Perceptions of data availability, collection, traceability, choice of format. What about the resource committed by the company in terms of money and people, human resources also? We want to learn about this. And more broadly, you see that the official questionnaire by the ministry is not the only tool we use to make the balance of the national experiment. We are now receiving self-assessment by companies and let's say, spontaneous feedbacks by sectors or by collective operators. We are working with a consultancy group, Ernst & Young, that work with us to interview some of the companies because we want to get more into some issues that for us are more complicated to understand. Consumers organizations and environmental NGOs will send us reports. And we want to test controllability. Is the environmental information controllable, and how is it controllable? So we asked the DG CCRF, which is the French Market Surveillance Authority, to act as if they were doing their own job, but with new information, to see the gap, to see how they, what they can tell us about the controllability of such information. And by the end of this year, we will send the report to the French Parliament. What have we learned so far? A lot of business mobilization, and even inside the companies. We consider it was a success. It boosted expertise, collective capacity building, business creativity. There was obviously international interest. Some companies are saying that it was an advantage for them to be a pioneer. It improved, in some cases, the corporate image. And we are glad to be a kind of laboratory for Europe, and we want to work as the close possible with the European Commission. Of course, next step is harmonization, but everybody knows this, and the participating companies, this is their first requirement, the first thing that comes on the table. We need methods, and I will finish now. Okay, the calendar is scheduled. It already exists for some products in France. I will talk to you about this later. And I thank you very much. I would be glad if you could visit this page of the ministry. Thank you very much.